All right, so next one we have is, when does the FDCPA, that's Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, apply to mortgages? So this is the law that deals with debt collectors. And so, you have a medical bill, an old credit card debt, you get debt collectors. We don't normally think about mortgage companies as debt collectors. And I was invited to do some training for a nationwide group of foreclosure defense lawyers. And my topic was, how do we use the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act to help our clients who are either facing foreclosure, maybe they've already been foreclosed. And so I got up and I announced it, and people were kind of looking at me funny, and somebody raised their hand. They go, "What are you talking about? That applies to debt collectors. That doesn't apply to mortgage companies." And now these are really good lawyers, very skilled lawyers from all over the nation. And they had not made the connection that the FDCPA does. Now, I'm not saying nobody has made that connection, but just by and large, even lawyers that defend consumers don't think about the FDCPA. So here's the, let me just tell you when the FDCPA applies. When does it apply? Imagine this is the note, this is the debt. What we look at is we say, when that mortgage company, I don't care if we're talking about somebody buying the debt or servicing the debt, when they first put their hands on it, is the debt in default? If the answer is no, then they're not going to be a debt collector. What if the answer is yes? Then normally they will be a debt collector. Well, courts have struggled with this, and defendants are always saying, well, yeah, you were 3 months late, but you were not in default. It's kind of funny because they're arguing you're not in default because they don't want the FDCPA to apply, because it gives you tremendous tools if the FDCPA applies, especially if you're dealing with Alabama state law, which has really been kind of cut back in a way that harms consumers, just the way the law is. Under the FDCPA, you have a lot more options. So here's the definition. If it's in default when that mortgage company gets it, they're a debt collector. Well, what's default? Well, they want to say it's like, definitely, if here's when your payment was due and here's when you sue them, they want to say, well, it was somewhere over here that you actually would have been in default. Here's a very simple way to do it. You look at the note and it says default. It says, if you do not make your payment by the due date, you're in default. Now, the mortgage companies and their lawyers go crazy over this. They're like, that can't be the law, because if your payment's due on the 1st and it gets transferred to Wells Fargo on the 6th and you pay it on the 7th, that can't be default. Well, you know what? It is default. That's what the contract. We didn't write the contract. The mortgage company wrote the contract. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they wrote the contract. So we're just following the contract. And it's funny because these mortgage companies will say, let's say you're coming up on a foreclosure, and this is your foreclosure, and you're going to file bankruptcy, and you miss it by 1 day. You file bankruptcy 1 day late. They go, pah, you can't stop the foreclosure. It already happened. You were 1 day late. You go, but it was only 1 day. Or you make your payment 1 day after the grace period, and they go, boom, there's a $50 charge. You go, but it was 1 day. They go, oh, no. You follow the contract. You agreed to this. That's all we do with them, is we say, hey, mortgage company, you now have this contract, and you or your supposed predecessor wrote this contract. It says if you don't pay on the due date, you're in default. Well, then that's what we're going to do. So if we're 1 day late, we're in default, and then it gets transferred to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Ocwen, whoever. Well, they're a debt collector now. And almost all of them now, you look at any letters down at the bottom, it'll say, please be advised, this is an attempt to collect a debt, and we are a debt collector. Very powerful law. So you want to notice, if you're dealing with, say, Bank of America, and then it changed over to Sinlar, SPS, Chase, whoever it was, look at when it transferred, were you current or were you behind? And then look at your note, and almost all the notes will say if you're 1 day late, you're in default. And so then the FDCPA is going to apply. Now, again, they'll fight you like the devil on this because they hate this law, but it's a very powerful law and it's worth that battle.